I'm Vice President of the Pownal Historical Society and contributor to today's program, along with assistance from Linda Hall and Wendy Hopkins. Wendy did a lot of work with me on sorting through these various photographs, finding the material to add, getting things sorted, working on explanations, trying to figure out where things were that we didn't know what they were. The program today is in two parts. The first part is called Life Before the Traffic Jam and was added to the program. We were originally going to do this with Camelot Village with a program on the Titanic, and I was going to present the last of the Great Railroad Wars. So the first piece has been added, and that's where we're starting out. And feel free to make comments and ask questions as we go along, and add your understanding of what we're looking at. But it's the first piece is mostly just looking at old photographs of the area and the way things were back in the old days. Subtitle: By Horse, by Trolley, by Guess, and by Golly, How We Got Around in 1910. And this elegant car here is one of the cars that ran on the Berkshire trolley line between Williamstown and Bennington. It's actually shot up in Bennington, and we see some people here in their Sunday finest, along with the motormen, and presumably the conductor is here too. It took two men to run the trolley car in those days when you had a big car, and quite an elegant thing with all the nice windows and big front doors they could open up and let the air in, and this was one of the regular cars that ran.
Can you turn the music down just a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Better?
Much better.
Okay, next one. So transportation, 1910, was a little different than it is now. And railroads were the primary way that people went long distances from place to place. You had to go from New York to Chicago, you got on the train, and it would take about 2 days to go to Chicago, and it would take about a week to go out to the West Coast, across the country. Steamships, trolley lines, stage lines, horse and wagon was the local means of transportation. And the automobile industry was just getting started at this time. There were probably, by 1910, 200,000 automobiles in the United States. And Ford Motor Company was just getting into its major part of ironing out the bugs on the production line for the Model T. And paved roads you had in some cities, which were mostly cobblestone roads, and very few roads that were actually paved with any paving material. Some were hard packed in a few places, but it was basically mud outside of the city. And aviation, that was, you know, for guys who were crazy. Next. So before the railroad, travel was limited to how far you could get on a horse or walk in a day, 10, 20, 15 miles basically. This is a shot of Bellows Falls, and here we see an early filling station. They're stopping off to get water, and in the center of every town or nearby some place of commerce in every town, you had a watering hole. And if you go up Route 7A out of South Shaftesbury, going up the hill there, on the left-hand side, there is an old watering trough up there, a little business that's up there, and that runs and has run since early on. And that's where people watered their horses, and everywhere you went, there was places to stop and get feed and water. So, next. So railroads were the way to go. And I believe this is Northampton, Mass. And anyway, I'm sorry, Northfield, Mass. And probably Boston and Maine train coming in here. And what you can see here is a standard kind of depot and baggage carts on the side, people waiting for people to come and go, and horse and wagon over here. Next. So down at the depot, this was the place. Everybody came and went from the depot. Freight came in, freight went out, goods came in, goods came out, people came in and out. And you usually had an entourage of people here. You had the train crew folks, you had baggage handlers, you had a telegraph operator. This is where messages came in and out of the town. You had a station agent who would collect freight and set up to have your cows moved or your milk moved, and would arrange for your passageway and getting across the country. And it was really the focus of every town. And if the town didn't have a railroad, it was nothing. It was considered just not the place to be in the day. So S. George, I'm not sure if this is the name of an enterprise that's attached to the station, or whether this is the name of the station manager. Hard to tell here. But here's a telegraph line coming in. And the reason why the train stations were the telegraph agents was because the railroad ran telegraph lines everywhere in order to control the railroad. That's how the line was controlled. They would send messages back and forth saying, run this train ahead of that one, stop this one when it gets in, this one has to, do this or that. And orders were telegraphed ahead and then handed to the train crew, and the train crew had to stop and pick up their orders along with the passengers and putting off the mail and such like that. So this was the focus of life at that time, down at the station. Next. And the railroad was an employer of tens of thousands of people, and it took numerous folks. Just to run a train, as far as the train crew went, there were an average of 7 or 8 guys on a freight train, and on a passenger train there might only be 4 or 5, but a lot of folks employed getting the train over the railroad. These ladies were involved in cleaning, obviously. They're the little safety first sign, and everything was kept spick and span. The railroads wanted business, they wanted to grow their business, so the passenger trade was considered the item. And they did everything they could to make and impress the public, to make a good image, keep everything spotlessly clean, and run the best service they could in the day. So it was really important, and that took a lot of work. And every time a steam locomotive went 150 or 200 miles, it went in the shop and it had maintenance for the day. So it took a lot of people working on trains just to get a train all the way from New York to Chicago. Might change locomotives 15 or 20 times. And you had the crews at the intermediate spots to take care of them. Next. So here's the train crew at the ready. And on the head end, you've got the engineer, you've got his long stem oiler here, and the fireman, and this guy's the head end brakeman. And possibly these guys are either railroad agents or possibly conductors like that, don't know. And this young lady here is the youngest member of the train crew, probably the engineer's daughter. Got to ride in the locomotive cab and blow the whistle and pull out the throttle, and that was a great thrill for a kid. And my grandfather worked on the railroad, I got to do that as a kid. And it's quite a thrill. But there were no child labor laws in those days. So in addition to the regular people who worked on the railroad, young ladies and young men, as young as 8 and 9 years old, would have an outfit that they would carry, and they would get on a train at one station and they would hawk newspapers, and they would sell candy bars and fruit and sandwiches and whatever they had that was local. And they'd go to the next station, they'd get off and ride the next train back, and they'd do that 3 or 4 times a day. And somebody was, having them go out and do that and pay them for doing it, and they got to keep a piece of it. Thomas Edison's first job was doing that. That was one of the things he did in life early on. Next. And first woman engineer, waiting for her crew to come back. Do not understand this photograph. Women were not promoted to engineers, and this lady is obviously taking command of this locomotive and waiting for somebody. And we don't know why exactly. But the interesting thing about this is a typical of the kind of locomotives that were built at the turn of the century and just before. And you know that because this front piece up here, these are wooden slats, they're not steel. On top of the driving cylinder that drives the drive wheels is a set of valves that has a flat cap on it. And that was called a flat valve or a slide valve. Up here, your headlight is not an electric light. There's no generator on the engine, so it's either kerosene or it's carbide. And don't see any air pump. Probably would have been on the other side. The cab is small and wooden and extends up much higher than the boiler. The bell that you had to ring manually, and this is a sandbox here where they put sand so you could get traction on the driving wheels. Next. So this is a typical horse for a freight train, and you know it's a freight locomotive by several characteristics. One is the lead wheels that guide the train, and only two of these up front. Plus the driving wheels are relatively small. You wanted high torque so that you could do a lot of pulling. And so relative to the cylinders here, you can see they come about 3/4 of the way up. The drivers on a passenger train come up higher. Small air compressor here, one of the first ones they had, a single stage like this. Air brakes were invented by George Westinghouse at the turn of the century. It started to be putting on trains in the early 19-teens and just after the turn of the century. Central Vermont unit here. No generator on top that we can see on this one. But the valving here does not have a flat surface, but uses a piston valve. So that was the next innovation on these locomotives. Next. And by comparison, a passenger horse. So here you have four wheels up front guiding it along, and much taller drivers because you want the train to make speed rather than torque. And in comparison to the cylinders here, you can see they come up over the top of that. And same kind of situation. There is a generator here, so this is probably an electric light and a steel cab on a more modern engine. Next. And from the Grand Trunk, we're going to talk about them later. Here you can see very, very high driving wheels. This is meant for high-speed travel. Four wheels up front, and they innovated to put a wheel in back to support a bigger firebox. You got your air compressor here. This is where you put the sand in for the wheels, and like that.
What did high speed mean?
High speed means that locomotive could go 60, 70 miles an hour. A freight train was designed to run at 30 miles an hour. Inspection, the special locomotive here that was built for New York Central. You wanted to take the division manager out, or you wanted to take the client out and impress them with your facilities and show them the railroad. You had this special train where seats were put on the side of the boiler on the locomotive here to go out and survey the line, and they had stairs so you could stop and get down and get out, look at things, get back on. But inspection locomotive, kind of an odd thing, but fuel them around anyway. Next. And bringing up the rear, on all freight trains of the day, you had at least one caboose, which is a Dutch word, some sort of a mangling of cabin house. I'm not sure exactly what the derivation is, but it's debated. And you've got at least three guys back here. Sometimes you had four. You had a flagman, you had a brakeman, and you had a conductor. And if they had one guy back here who could cook, that's all he did. Because he cooked and kept the crew, and the rest of the crew would do the groundwork and take care of whatever switching needed to be done, because it was important you'd be out on the railroad. You'd run for 16 hours of running time you were allowed in those days, and then you put up somewhere and you had to stay overnight, and there was no hotel to stay at. You stayed in the caboose. And then the engineer and fireman would come back and bunk with you, and whoever could cook and was a good cook, that was far more important than somebody getting down and throwing a switch.
What year was the caboose eliminated? About 60s?
I
can
want to
remember.
say that cabooses came off in about 1980, 85, sometime in there.
It was before 85,
Was it?
because I was on the railroad YMCA board, and they were still union and management, and were still fighting that, talking about that. So it must have been early 80s.
Yeah, it was I know I had moved to Connecticut, and I came to Connecticut in 1983. And 1986, I went to move the locomotive that we bought from Steamtown. After Steamtown had moved down to Scranton, they auctioned off some of the locomotives. In the museum, I remember I bought one, and I came back with it to make sure the rail crew didn't wreck it on the way. And we went on D&H, and there was a big notice in the office in Binghamton that said, crews are reminded of the necessity of removing the rear end marking device from the train before coupling up. And they had just taken the cabooses off of the D&H, and the crews were mad about it. So they had these automatic devices that would radio the engineer what the conditions of the brake were on the back, and they would just couple them up and slam the cars into them and brake. They would just smash them. So I said, is this a problem? He says, go look out back, and there was a pile of these things sitting back there that the crews had mashed. So I know that was when they came off of the D&H, was about that time, but they may have come off the other railroads, you know, later on, but, or earlier, I don't know. Next. So there were no private jets or private planes in those days, so people had private rail cars. And these were very elaborate things, and built by incredible craftsmen. This is a heavyweight car, probably weighs on the order of 100 tons. And it may have had a steel underframe, or it may have been wood. It's got a truss rod that supports the length of this thing. And you've got 6 wheels in back and 6 wheels on front. Heavyweight trucks. And these very elegant windows and nice brass work on the rear. And you look back here and you see there are 3 hoses coming down. And originally there was one for the brake line, which would have been this one that's furthest out. The one closer to the center was the signal line, and this connected the various cords and valves that the brakeman and the conductor used in back to signal the engineer to stop at a station. It would blow a whistle up front, so the engineer would know what they wanted to do. And this line back here, which makes this car a fairly recent car, I'm surprised it's got it, considering the age. This would have been the steam heat line, right back here. They changed over from coal stoves in each of the cars to steam heaters about that time. And this would have been an elegant, high-priced car, so it would have had the latest innovation. So it has the new steam heat system in it. Next. And, you know, dinner on the diner. It started very early on. So you have the maitre d' here, and you have this steward and the chef. And when the chef showed up in the morning for whatever train he was assigned to, whoever was the head chef, he went out and bought all the groceries before he came to work and bought everything that he was going to cook for the day. He had an allowance and a budget to do that. And he would come to work with all his groceries prepared to make whatever meals he was going to instruct his other assistants to make that day. Everything was made and served fresh. So right from the beginning, if you had a very good chef, it was a talent, and the best chefs made almost as much as the conductors did in those days. Next. And when you went to retire at night, you could afford it. You bought yourself a Pullman berth, and there was a berth that folded down from the top, and the seats in the bottom folded together to make a berth. So they were known as uppers and lowers. So this is upper 3, and this is lower 3. And the young lady is retiring, and porter is bringing her a glass of water, tending to her in there. And that was extra fare. It usually cost as much for a Pullman berth as it did for your fare. So if it cost you $2 to go down and you wanted overnight accommodation, just pay another $2 to sit in that vehicle suite in the Pullman. Next. So Pownal had 2 train stations, and this is the North Pownal station, and this is looking east, and right over and about here is where the old mill was, and Tannery Road goes right behind where the station is here. two tracks going through Pownal. This one would have been the eastbound track, this would have been the westbound main. And if you look down here, you can see the siding coming off to the tannery or the mill. And over here, you can see there's a bridge. And that bridge goes over to the quarry where they quarried limestone. And they brought it down to a crusher and a loader they had, and they loaded limestone for agricultural purposes into rail cars here to ship stuff out. And that was a big deal. And the reason it was a big deal is if you were a railroad, you made money hauling freight, but if you originated the load, you got a bigger cut of the division. You got a front piece for originating the load, and then they split whatever it cost to ship it between people who carry it based on mileage. The other thing that's of interest here is you've got this thing, which is a train order signal. And when these are set straight out, it tells the engineer that there's orders for them to pick up, and they have to stop the train, or they have to pick up whatever's there. And if they're in a lower position and they're permitted to come by, this might mean, since it's in between straight up and straight down, might mean that they're going to hoop them up orders on the fly, or if they have to stop, they can stop if permitted to. And down here on the end of the platform, you see these milk cans, and up here, this is what's known as French Hill. Next. And this is Main Street. This is right where we are, right out across the street here, looking to the west. And train order boards are down, so the train doesn't have to stop unless he has some reason to do that. And behind here is a freight house. I didn't know that was there. I didn't know there was a freight house, but apparently there is. And that's Main Street. So this is looking the other direction, looking to the east, and down here you can see a water tank. Locomotives use 3, sometimes 4 times the amount of water as they use fuel, coal, or oil. They had oil. And so they had to make frequent stops and refill their water tanks so they could get from place to place. Usually you had one of these tanks every 20 miles, not much further than that, because that would be all a freight train could make without having to stop for water. Next. And this is looking to the mill, which is down here where the stack is. I'm not sure if this is the crusher building. You can see the bridge coming across here from the quarry, and Pownal Dam is down here somewhere. Next. And the Rutland Railroad came down from Rutland to North Bennington, and wound its way out. Across the street from the station, up the hill by the hospital, turned, made a 180-degree turn and headed up across the road there by Bennington Museum, out by the school, down around the monument, up the hill, made a turn to the west and continued on out, crossing over what is Vermont Route 9 and out toward Rensselaer 99, down through Hoosick and crossed over the B&M at Petersburg Junction on down through North Petersburg, all the way down to Chatham, New York, where that line ran. This is the old station, Petersburg. Next. So B&M going east through the Hoosick Tunnel. This is North Adams. This is a later shot. This is probably the 20s or the 30s. And got a steam engine up front, but when you got to North Adams, they didn't want to suffocate the passengers or the engineers on the train going through the Hoosick Tunnel. So an electric locomotive, that you can see this is the support for the electric wires going up. They put an electric locomotive on the front of the train, haul through the tunnel. They get to the other side, the electric would drop off and the train would keep going. They did that both ways. Next. So rail travel could be dangerous. Just like the Titanic, there were accidents. Next. So, when the trains turned over, if there was a hot fire in the firebox, it wasn't unusual for the boilers to blow up, because you take the water away from the top of the boiler and that heat would burn through the crown sheet and the boiler would go. And wooden coaches splintered, and when the wooden coaches turned on their sides and you had coal stoves in there, coal would set the cars on fire. and people were not necessarily commonly killed by the wreck itself, but they burned or they boiled from the steam. Next. And this is what the conductor feared most. Going out the back door and having a locomotive headlight coming the other way. That was a bad day. That happened. I think there's actually a couple up here, but happened a lot. Next. And another hazard of New England railroads. I assume this is up in Maine, since this is Maine Central snowplow that went off the rails in the snowstorms. And frequently, New England snowstorms cause delays. And today, when we travel, the locomotives, they go through the snow pretty well. Most of them have plows on them. But the biggest problem in running is in the fall when the leaves come off the trees and they stick to the rails and it gets wet. It's like trying to run on butter. And there have been days where we had to send a conductor and assistant conductor out ahead of the train with brooms and sweep the leaves off the rails so we could get up the grades going up Roxbury Hill. Next. In 1915, railroads started putting heavyweight cars, steel construction cars, which lasted longer and were safer to ride in. And so that more comfortable, more durable, lasted longer was the main thing railroads was interested in. So that's what you had. And here on the back, again, you can see fusion hoses. You got the brake line, the signal line, and on this side would have had the steam line. Next. Steamships, how you came and went. If you wanted to go from North America somewhere to another continent, to Europe or South America or from the west coast to Asia, you did it by boat. And this is the sister ship to the Lusitania. This is the Mauritania. And the Maury lasted until past the end of World War II. It was a troop ship during World War II. And the crews hated it. It was not built right to begin with, and it had problems with its steam mechanisms. And when they would run the ship at 20 knots out on the ocean, the steam machinery vibrated so badly that everybody got on a sod on board. And after they ran it for a couple of years, they put it back into dry dock. They went through, they ripped out a lot of the machinery, they rebalanced everything, put it all back together, sent it out on the ocean. And it was a lot better, but it wasn't perfect. And if they had to make speed at all, they were unhappy because there was just a lot of unpleasant vibration on the ship. But she lasted a real long time. Next. So trolleys is how you got around in town and in and out of your towns. And I'm not sure that these aren't actually cable car runs. I don't know where this photograph is, but here you see a horse-drawn version of a trolley car riding on the tracks. And this might actually be a cable car here, but I can't quite tell. I can't see if there's any gripping mechanism or whether you just can't see the wires and tell if this is a real trolley. But these slots, you tell me that these were, at least one time, were cable car runs. And horses and carriages, and here's a primitive automobile over here, so it's in that time frame. Next. And finally, in 1907, Bennington gets its railroad. It comes through Pownal, gets its trolley line, and this was taken on opening day up in Bennington. And this is on Main Street, and this is the Methodist Church being built up there. And young lad here, standing with conductor and motorman on that fine car that they brought up. Next. So here's the route of the line, how it went up from the state border, curved around and followed the railroad into Pownal. And after getting into the main part of Pownal, followed around 346 up by Barrington's farm. It started curving up the hillside, climbed on up where Route 7 was about to be, and up through Pownal Center, and went straight off about through where the elementary school is and headed on up to the north, winds up crossing over Middle Pownal Road somewhere up there, coming in from the east side of town, and heads on down to the train station. Next. So here's a car called Bennington. I don't know if this ever ran in Bennington, but was taken down in Pittsfield, but it certainly could have been up here. Next. Another car called Bennington. I think this is down at State Line. And there's a little one. Only got 4 wheels on it, single truck. And probably would have just had combination conductor motor. We wouldn't have had 2 guys on it. Didn't need 2 crews. We didn't have that many people we were going to carry. Next. And a ticket from back in the day. And you can see here you can go all the way down from South Lee and up here you get to Pittsfield, Adams, North Adams. I don't see Bennington on here or anything north of the state border, but you get all over the place. Dalton, they had all these lines running around. So you could basically go, from the end of Massachusetts to the other end of Massachusetts and on into Vermont in a day. Next. So here's the trolley line. Coming up the hill, you got Meeting House and Union Church here. This is Bartle's Lodge, this is Center Street, and houses along there. And you see how the line came up a little bit near where the powerhouse was. I'm not sure it was on this side or this side. Can't quite see it there. And below grade, this is where the road level is here today, and the trolley line comes underneath it and heads almost straight to the north, whereas 7 goes more this way. Anybody recognize any of these things? I think this is the schoolhouse here. It's on North Pownal Road. My house is like right about there, which isn't there at that time.
The one there by the bridge, isn't that the old jailhouse?
I don't know.
Or catacombs to the left, yeah, the one on the left.
Downstairs.
Take your word for it.
Yeah, there's 2 there, right? There's one all the way down on the corner down there, and then there's another one that's a little higher to the right of it.
There used to be houses quite a ways along 7 there, then they tore them all down during the Depression. Along 7. And there was quite a few houses along North Pownal Road and Cedar Hill Road. They nobody around to pay taxes on them, so they throw a torch at them. Urban renewal,
No, North Pownal Road would come.
Went right between the house and the old mill there, the old garage. Then it went around the back of the houses and then over, because the old road didn't go all the way to where it is today. Didn't go up the Center Street, came in back of the houses and then out right by the townhouse or town office. I got pictures of horses hauling wagons down that road.
Next one. That's the sign that's in the town office. And the line coming up from Pownal Center climbs 437 feet and 2.5 miles, which is about a 3% grade.
Yeah,
That's twice what a railroad would tolerate. If they had a 1.5% grade, they'd try to reduce that to 1. And if it were 2% grade, they wouldn't build a line. And there are 2% grades in Vermont, but they're few and far between, and the railroad regrets that they're there.
Well, it was good for milk, because in Pownal Center, they put the milk on the trolley cars. And
Really?
It'd be in North Adams before people started getting up.
Wow.
50 miles an hour down Pownal Mountain.
Coasting all the way.
And this is a house that's supposed to be there. It's on Middle Pownal Road where the line crossed, and I'm not sure exactly where that is. I've been trying to go out and look for it, but I haven't figured out where it is. This is all going over. It's all going.
There's a horse farm right in that area. It's still there, and they've got horses.
This house is supposed to still be standing, but I don't know. I haven't figured out where it is exactly.
trying to turn it all into the Greenberg Conservation Park.
This house was a stop for the trolley. You could get on and off here. Next. And another shot headed down into town. It's headed down the hill into Bennington. And I guess it must be stopped picking up people or letting people off. Conductor's got the door open and the steps down. Next.
There for a while, they used the trolley cars to go haul the lumber cars down from Woodford. Because the mills were all down there in the hollow. And it was too hard for the locomotives to get up there because they couldn't turn around. And so they sent the trolleys up, and the trolleys would haul all the lumber cars straight down Main Street.
That must have been a job because trolley cars didn't have any mechanism for air brakes. They had a compressor for their own brakes, but they didn't have any connections to connect to the car. So if they were dragging cars with any weight around and they tried to stop, you know, that load would just go pushing them down where they had to go.
They had 2 hotels up on the top of that hollow up in Searsburg.
It's a summer car. This is down in Bennington. This is another car that ran in Bennington. Next. And apparently was a line that ran from Bennington to Woodford that people would ride. And this is a nice summer car. And no windows, but they have rolled up canvas on the side, so if you ran into a thunderstorm, you could climb in and let the curtains down and have a little bit of protection anyway. But a lot of the attraction companies, which were primarily there for people to get to work Monday through Friday, that was their main bread and butter. But they wanted something to keep the lines busy on the weekend, keep their people going, keep some level of service. So they often built recreational facilities or bought large tracts for picnic ground and made these elaborate parks everywhere at the end of the lines so that people would have a reason to ride on the weekends. And next slide shows one of those. This is out in California, this Pacific Electric car. I don't know the exact location. I believe this is in Northern Cal. And one of these elegant facilities where they had spas, you could go and get a massage, you could swim, you could go sit in the sauna, you could, you know, walk around the lake and all like that. And later on, they started adding carousels and roller coasters, and they became big attractions of the day for people to do nice things on a Sunday. You'd have to sit home. Next. So this is one of the early development stages of the trolley car. This was human powered. Kids are having a good time getting a ride there, not on the tracks. It was easier to turn it around. I don't know what kind of fare they got for that. Next. And in between the towns, to compete with the trains, were what were known as interurban lines. And these were built with heavier gauge track. They were built with bigger ties and bigger rail and bigger cars, and they went a lot faster. And they were designed to get you from city to city rather than from your home to the office. Next. And here's an advertisement for one of the lines, and they literally ran up all and down up the East Coast. And so you can see you got, you know, Lewiston, Auburn, New Gloucester, all these places where it will stop in between. And they're advertising no dust, no dirt, no cinders, clean, comfortable. But here's the main thing. Cars leave every hour. If you were in a small town, there might only be one passenger train a day each way that would come through. Sometimes passenger trains came every other day. And if you wanted to go back and forth, this was the way to go. You could go up to the next town, see your mom, say hello, have dinner, go back same night, back down, because these things ran every hour or so. Next. About this time, about the turn of the century, started to have elevated lines coming in the city. They wanted the railroads off the street because they interfered with the horses. The horses and wagons and delivery people didn't like it. Wanted them out of the way, so they built elevated lines. This is South Station in Boston. Next. And this is our friends down in New Amsterdam, Yale and Brooklyn. It's a little bit later, but probably construction from turn of the century. Wooden slatted boards and wooden cars and like that. So made a lot of racket. Woke a lot of people up at night when they went by. Next. And first class accommodations. Ladies didn't have to sit next to somebody smoking a cigar or whatever. I love the hats. I love the hats they were in that time. And you can see some of the elegant woodwork. You got all this hand painting on the interior of the car and like that. Next. And once you got out of town, this is what the roads were like. They were basically non-existent. And I'm not sure this guy is indicating how to make a turn signal to the left. Got this hat on the radiator, but the old cars did make it over this terrain. They did get out there, but it took a while, and you made sure you had a couple of spare tires when you went, and it was an adventure. And there were clubs that were formed to promote auto journeys, and clubs that would drive around from place to place, and took a lot of courage in the early days. Because if something broke down, you had to fix it, or you were stuck out there, and maybe you could get a farmer to tow you back into town, and you still had to wait for parts to come from somewhere. Next. Old Route 7 here coming around the hill, Church and Bartle, and Center Street up here, and Carpenter Hill that way. Do you know what farm this is? Cindy, any idea what farm that is?
Egger Merchant.
Who was it?
Egger Merchants.
Merchants.
Pownal View Barn.
Yeah, it's where the Pownal View Barn is.
Next. And road coming up here to Center Street and Spartles and Meeting House. And this is actually paved, I'm amazed. But it's hard surface at that point. Next. Another shot.
Yeah, that was taken
Your
from.
trolley line is right here behind these cows. You can see the bridge coming over there where the right of way is, and I'm not even sure the trolley line is still there at that point. It may be a more recent photograph.
Well, some of it's been turned into roads up through, all the way to Bennington.
Yep.
And I used to use some of them to get to the fields. When I was doing hay fields all the way into Bennington, you go down and get on the old trolley bed and drive down to the fields, and had a lot of fun.
Love
Had to make sure you kept the equipment closed up because the bed itself wasn't that wide. You take a big baler and a tractor and a wagon behind, and you were kind of on the edge on both sides.
Back in 1968, when you go from Pownal to Bennington, the rails were right in the middle of the road.
Nick. And if town didn't have a railroad and didn't have a trolley line, this was the alternative. And there were still stage lines that went to these small towns. And up into the 19 teens, when finally motor carriages replaced these things, you still had a lot of stage lines, especially in the western states, the turn of the century, that were still active. But they were pretty much on the wane at that point.
Well,
Next.
Williams College put an end to horses in Williamstown because they got sick of smelling, you know what, from horses all over the college.
There are worse things. Anyway, horse and wagon, these are mules. Not horses, but people had mules, and families here, a load of groceries going home, I guess.
One trip a year to Troy.
4 kids in the wagon, and mom and dad, and loading up at the country store. Next. And oil products. Moved by horsepower. Oil companies and Rockefeller, he developed Standard Oil based on selling kerosene for lamp oil. Gasoline was a byproduct, it wasn't wanted, and they dumped it in the ditch. They didn't have automobiles to buy it, so he's probably hauling lamp oil around. Next. And I'm supposed to know the name of this guy. It's Mary delivering firewood. And we don't know who Mary is. Anybody know who Mary is? Anybody recognize this at all?
Could be a Lewis.
I'm gonna say Mary Lewis lived back here, yeah, they mean Mary, I know.
Next. And sack was collected in wagons and dragged down to the sugar house. Next.
Used to do that when I was a kid.
And livestock was hauled by horses and wagons. This is out in the west probably because it's a Southern Pacific car, which probably was used out west, not this area. The way these guys were dressed, I guess that's somewhere in the western states.
Well, they used to go out there and buy a lot of beef and sheep and horses. And they said if they couldn't find any town that didn't want, what was it, sheep farmers, they'd get to the town of Pownal, because nobody in Pownal would stop them from dropping all the sheep off, and it'd be 20 cars of sheep running up the hills.
Next. Winter time was also a horse-drawn affair. Horse looks like he's having a good time. The kids are enjoying it. And sleigh bells on the horse and kicking up his hooves. And lucky indeed were the folks that got to do this. Next, Christmas trees came by wagon. Loaded on rail cars, loaded on the wagons, and delivered to your house. Next. And it's a house in North Pownal, and a gentleman sitting there with a
That looks like the
nice
old
looking
Rudd
horse.
house. That looks like the old Rudd house.
Still standing in the house.
Yep.
And Mom is out on the roof washing the windows, got a jug propping up the windows, so it won't slam shut, she can back in.
I think he won it in a poker game.
Won it in a poker game.
Won the house and the farm in a poker game. He was good at it. He used to play poker all over Shaftesbury, Paddington, Pownal.
Next. And this is Mr. Wilcox. He was the mailman, delivering mail at the store there to Ben Powell, who's standing on the back. And a few other items he's making deliveries on or picking up maybe, I'm not exactly sure. But this is a North Pownal train
And
station.
the railroad was on the other side of the river there at one time. His store was the best one in North Pownal. But then they moved the tracks over to the east side of the river in front of the mill.
Yeah, I'm not sure when they did that, because the tracks went on both sides for a while, and then they moved them, and
Yep.
I don't know the exact dates. Next. So automobiles, not yet. Guy from Texaco is probably bringing lamp oil. Next. Motoring was a sport, and people on races and cross-country competitions to get from A to B. Next. This is right here, Center Street. This is where Fran lives. This is Lampman Garage, which is the original blacksmith place, and the old country store right there. North Pownal Road, and down in between.
Yeah.
This is Pownal Center Hall. On the white building there, up top.
Yep.
Used to dance there, I know.
Okay.
Next. And know whether these guys going to a Mason's convention or what, but they're all loaded on the wagon and going somewhere, and some sort of motor transportation here. I'm not enough of an expert, but the drive on the rear wheel is chain drive, so it's got to be older than 1920 anyway. And name Williamstown. Next. A lot of people who made wagons and such went to making automobiles, and they were not inexpensive. $2,500 is probably as much money as a mill manager made a year at the time, so this was a pretty good sum of money. Next. 1912 Wrangler cross country, 1650. This is probably a year and a half wages for a typical worker in the day. And when Henry Ford came along, he wanted his workers to be able to afford to buy his cars, which were $700, $800 machines. And so he raised the wages of his workers by a lot. And the other people in the auto industry called on him and said, "Henry, you can't do that." And he said, "I can do what I want. Go jump in the river." But that forced the wages up and helped keep the unions out of Ford Motor Company for a while. Next, aviation. You were lucky if you got from A to B in an airplane in those days. Old biplanes of
Well, we
coming
used to
into
have
service.
an airport right down here, North Pownal, and they had 2 hangars, and that was the type of planes coming and going.
These engines that are in here, these early engines are inline 6, some of them are inline 8-cylinder engines, water cooled early on. They're not air cooled engines yet, they're water cooled, and probably they were a good engine, they made 180 horsepower. Next. And there you go, you know, no waiting, just climb on board, strap yourself down and hope for the best. Next. This was the alternative. A lot of people rode bicycles, and it was a great way to get around. You put a little basket here and take your dog with you and your lunch with you. That was the way to go. Ladies out for a Sunday drive in their finest. Love the outfits. Next.
I don't know how they do that with skirt on.
Very careful.
And in the cities, a lot of boys were out delivering newspapers, delivering messages, telegrams. Could call up a store, send somebody out, the order will be delivered by young men.
Still doing it.
Work for tips.
They're still delivering stuff like that from the offices down there, using their bicycles.
It's a way to go.
Yep.
Next. So that ends this segment. I don't know if any other questions about any of this stuff? We'll just move on to the next piece. And Southern New England Railroad, where the line was planned and partially built and never completed. Next. And this was a competition for traffic and power and freight service between Grand Trunk of Canada and New York, New Haven, and Hartford. Next. And by 1910, this is what the New Haven Railroad looks like. These were all New Haven lines. There were many railroads here that had been consolidated under the guise of one J. Pierpont Morgan. And basically, anywhere that was any of any importance in New England, you could get to on the New Haven, or next. They basically had a monopoly. Next, Boston and Maine, and B&M served what the New Haven did not. Next, and see, these are Boston and Maine lines. Just coming up here, Connecticut River line, it still exists. And this little piece out this way is where the B&M cuts through Pownal. That's Pownal right there. So between New Haven and Boston and Maine, which was controlled by the New Haven, they basically had all of New England taken care of. And at that time, the manufacturing of New England would have been about proportionally equivalent to what California is today in terms of the percentage it contributes to the gross national product. And anything that was manufactured anywhere in the country was manufactured here. And we had it all in New England at that time. Everybody had jobs. Next. And they owned trolley lines. New Haven owned trolley lines. This is the Berkshire line, which they bought an interest in but never really controlled. Next, they ran steamships. You had the boats coming out of New York, going up to Fall River, Mass, and going to other places, going out to Long Island Sound, and New Haven controlled these lines as well. Next. And if you wanted to ship on the railroad, you had to go through one of their terminal facilities. You got charged a fee for unloading and loading at their stations or wherever they had to transship to another line or ship. You paid in addition to the charges for moving from A to B, you paid transfer fees at the terminals. Next. And often, you know, there was one railroad in town and it was in New Haven. And people weren't happy about that because that meant that the prices they had to pay to ship stuff or to go places cost more because you didn't have any alternative. If your town was lucky enough to have 2 railroads, or in some cases 3 to cross in a particularly important place, you could negotiate your rates between them. Next. So Grand Trunk was Canadian line, which had extensions all the way out to the west coast eventually became Canadian National, was running from Chicago all the way up to Quebec and had lines coming down into Portland, Maine, and controlled the central Vermont, which ran down to New London. And they wanted more of this traffic to come their way. Next. This is our headquarters up in Montreal, which is pretty elegant for the day. Next. This man is the head of Grand Trunk at that time, Charles Melville Hayes. He's the guy who masterminds the plan and makes it happen. Next. And it basically had 2 objectives. They wanted a year-round Atlantic port because Quebec froze over in the wintertime and there were problems with Portland and there was problems with New London for them. But they really wanted to grab a piece of New Haven's freight. They could take 5% or 10% away from New Haven, that was gravy for them. Next. And this is one of their crack passenger trains of the day, and probably wooden coaches at this point still. Next. Very elegant station in Montreal that they had at the time. I think this is long one. I don't think that's standing anymore. Next. So this was the plan. They were going to break the New Haven's freight monopoly. They wanted the freshwater ports that were open in the winter, and the Portland, Maine facility was too small and not enough ships came to call there, and they didn't want to invest and build all the port facilities that they needed at that point. And from the central Vermont of Palmer, the distance to New London was the same as the distance to Providence, so they decided they were going to build a line from Palmer to Providence. And New London was too small, and the big problem with New London was they shared trackage with the New Haven. And the New Haven would prevent them from running their traffic the way they wanted to. They would delay the trains, they would make it hard for them to operate. They couldn't find a cooperative agreement. The New Haven just tried to make it difficult for them to do business there. Next. So the plan is, you know, no shared right of way. We're going to do it all on our own track. We're not going to share anybody's track on our line. No railroad crossings at grades, we don't have to get anybody's permission, we'll go over the top, we'll build bridges, we'll go over them, we'll go under them, whatever we have to do. And we're going to go out from Palmer to Providence. Providence is a place, we've got friends down there, we know people down there who are sick of paying New Haven's freight rates, and they want us to come to town, so that's where we're going to go. Some of the people speculated they really wanted to go to Boston, which may have been the eventual plan, which they probably might have done if they built this part of the line, but the original plan was to go to Providence. Next. So here's the route coming out this way, going south and east, going across the southern end, southeast end of Massachusetts, and turning, going south down to Providence, where they plan to go. Next. And this was a run Palmer, south and east, Brimfield, Fishdale, Southbridge, which is near where Route 74 comes into the Mass Pike down there. Blackstone Junction, they bought this railroad. They basically bought it. They were going to cross over it, so they bought it. And they control it. Into East Thompson, one sucker, Rhode Island, and then down Providence, and one down in Narragansett Bay, where they had developers ready to give them space and create facilities, and they had deals worked out. Next. And this was the opposition. This man, J. Pierpont Morgan, financier, and one of the wealthiest people in the country at the time. And this is his director of the New Haven, the president of the New Haven line, Charles S. Mellon, and he did his apprenticeship on the Northern Pacific back in the days when Billings was president, and eventually got called by Morgan to come back and run the New Haven for him. Next. And this postcard of the old New Haven office building, which isn't as elegant as Grand Trunks, but utilitarian. Next. So here's the strategy that Morgan came up with. Use every available means to keep Grand Trunk out. We want to do everything we can. Political influence with the states and towns, control the news, exert economic pressure, buy property and stock, and whatever else we can throw at them to delay them, we're going to do it. Next. So what they did is they bought off the legislators. If you wanted to build a railroad, you had to get a charter from the state that said you were allowed to go from A to B and how much money you were going to put up and set the provisions and when you were going to do it and all kinds of things about how your service was going to be conducted, and the states controlled that. Well, Mellon and his minions went out and started bribing the people in the state legislature, and they would do that by saying, oh yeah, you have to ship we'll give you some rebates on your wool rates, or how do you like a pass for you and your family on the New Haven and the B&M? And they would use various means that they could to get these guys working for them. And they basically tried to get them to delay the charter and create onerous charter provisions that were going to slow down the progress of the line. And they also did the same thing with politicians in the town. They would find somebody who wanted to run for mayor, and they'd give him a donation to his campaign fund and give him a free pass, and there was anything they could do to create what they needed done. Next. They controlled the news. They go to the newspaper editors, which is how most people got their news in the day, and they pay them to run stories that they wrote about the quality of the New Haven line and how it was shipping faster than Grand Trunk and all the rest of this. And they would buy ads in the newspapers. Oh, you having a little trouble raising funds there at the newspaper, keeping it going? How about if we buy an ad every week in your paper? And they did that, played that game. And they offered favorable treatment. They would say, oh, want to ship your newspaper in, we'll give you a month's free shipping on your newsprint. We'll carry your papers on our trains and sell them for you. How about that? Whatever happened passes to the editors and the reporters as well. Okay. And J.P. Morgan, there was no Federal Reserve Bank at the time. He was the Federal Reserve Bank. When the government needed money in California, they called Morgan and he'd make a shipment or make sure there was exchanges of credit, and he would make it happen. When banks needed money in the Midwest, bringing the harvest in the fall, he moved the money. And he worked with the Department of Treasury to make sure that the money supply flowed into government. Why? Not because he was a nice guy, but it was good for continued business. And what he wanted more than anything else was quiet, continual business. No interruptions, no disruptions, no surprises. And Morgan worked very hard to make the economy in this country smooth during the early years of the 20th century. And he's responsible for putting an end to a number of nasty economic situations that he took care of for the government, so that people kept working and the dividends kept flowing to the stockholders. So he pressured the banks on the East Coast that he controlled, and he controlled a lot of them and knew a lot of them, to deny funding for the Grand Trunk. He pressured the brokers not to sell their stocks and bonds, and he locked out the Grand Trunk from the U.S. capital markets. They couldn't get money. He gave sweetheart deals to suppliers. He went to the steel mills and said, "We'd like to order all the rails you're going to manufacture for the next 2 years." And he locked up the supply, and Grand Trunk couldn't get supplies. They couldn't get rail, they couldn't get ties, they couldn't get tie plates, they couldn't get equipment, because Morgan locked it up. New Haven didn't need it all, but he bought it and resold it to other lines, but he made sure the Grand Trunk didn't get it. So he tried to exert pressure on banks in London because he knew GT was going to go there, and that's where they had to go. Next. So they would buy property, they'd find out where the line was supposed to go, they'd go to a farmer and they'd offer him retirement money to buy some small piece of property and make the railroad have to go on a different route. They would buy connecting lines if they could, anything that they had to connect with or had control over that they could be a nuisance to the Grand Trunk. They fought them tooth and nail. Marine companies refused to do shipping with Grand Trunk, but Morgan said, you know, if you're going to do business with me in New Haven, you're not going to do business with them. And they bought Grand Trunk stock to be a nuisance on the board. Next. So Hayes finally said, well, okay, I can't get this done in the U.S. without help from London, so he goes off to London to do it. And there were no funds available from the central Vermont. They were barely squeaking along. They couldn't get any money out of them. And he arranges for $6 million in credit in Europe to build his southern New England line. And in early 1912, he has to go off to London to meet with the board over there and people who are backing his bonds and arrange for supplies to come from Europe, because he can't buy them in North America because Mellon has tied him up. And as he goes, he takes his male secretary from the railroad, he takes his wife, daughter, and son, and off they go. And before he goes, he sets out the first construction contracts to start grading the right-of-way and building abutments for bridges along the line that have to be constructed, which is going to take the most amount of time. So he gets the job in motion before he leaves for Europe. Next. And this is some Grand Trunk stock. And the date on here is September 16th, 1911. And he sold a lot of this over in Europe to the Europeans who were heavy investors in railroads in America at the time. Next. The Canadian government backed them by nonetheless putting one of the Grand Trunk trains on their currency at the time. They were, you know, all in favor of Canadian enterprise. Next. And Hayes finishes his business in London and he goes to meet with a friend of his who runs the White Star Line. And the president of the White Star Line says, hey, we got a new ship going out on a maiden voyage. Why don't you and your family and party come back with me and be my guests? So off they go on the Titanic. And of course, Hayes and his son and his secretary were males, go down with the ship, and his wife and daughter managed to survive in the lifeboats. Next. Eventually, his body is recovered and he's buried up in Canada. Next. And what happens is the railroad goes down with the ship too. The leadership at Grand Trunk after he left is confused. There's fights about whether they should continue to work or not. And they had actually begun grading in May 1912. And by November, the board of directors of Grand Trunk said, nah, we're not sure we want to go on with this, and they pulled the plug. And the contractors who said, wait a minute, we haven't done our work, we got contracts to finish this work here. So they get sued and they have to go back and start the process of constructing the line again because they're forced to in the American courts, probably aided, you know, more or less by interference from the Morgan people trying to make a nuisance, suing them in court. And work continues on and off till 1916, and at the beginning of World War I, that's the end of the line. They finally say, enough, not going to get built, and that's the end of it. And the one final question is what happened to the gold? And in order for Hayes to secure credit in American banks, he had to make a gold deposit in the banks that he could borrow against to use to get his credit. And that gold had to come across the Atlantic somehow or other. Did it come on the Titanic? We don't know. And there's been conjecture different ways. Gold was never manifested on ships for two reasons. Number one, the banks didn't want to advertise for security reasons. They were shipping it. Number two, Lloyd's of London would not insure it. The banks had to be self-insured for those shipments. So it didn't show up on the manifest as gold being shipped that was being insured by Lloyd's. It would show up as other cargo. That's the way it would show up. So we don't know, but there has been arguments for years and years about whether or not there's Titanic gold from railroad down there with the Titanic. An intriguing question still to this day. Next. And this one stretches right away. There's a number of places where you can find nice walking trails and go out and walk along and see the old abutments out through eastern Mass. And there are maps of this, and you can locate these places on the web if you want to go visit. Next. And this is the source. This is Mr. Lowenthal's book, and I've just given you a small sample of what's in his book about the line, and it's worth a read. It's an interesting piece, and if you're interested in more, these books are available through the bookstores or through Mr. Lowenthal online. And next, my first railroad job. Ages ago. Next. And now we're from the Railroad Museum of New England, which is in Thomaston, Connecticut. Some of our equipment. Next. And this is our current baby. This is a piece of Vermont history. This was a coach car that was built in 1891, converted to a combine in the early 1900s and ran on the Rutland Railroad and the Green Mountain and Vermont Rail Service until 1909. And they wanted to find a home for this up in Shelburne. Shelburne, for some reason, didn't want it, didn't fit with their collection, whatever. So we got a call and we took it down to Thomaston. But this car, on the interior, is all beautiful hand-carved woodwork that you could not create for love or money if you could find a craftsman to do it today. And the exterior is a little rough and needs some work, but the interior is just absolutely gorgeous. And this is probably the oldest, or one of the oldest pieces of railroad equipment running still in America, carrying passengers today. Next. This is December of 2003, makes its last turn on Vermont rails, gets delivered to North Bennington, lifted up, picked up off the trucks, went on a truck and trucked down to Thomaston, put back together where it's in service again and being restored. The move, to move this thing over the railroad and drag it by truck from North Bennington to Thomaston was an investment of $25,000 by the museum. And we will invest another $30,000 in restoring the exterior and interior before we're done. It's reasonable to present to the public. We do take it out, but it needs more work. Next. So, if you enjoy New England's rail heritage and interested in that, I encourage you to get down to Thomaston and ride their line this summer. We've got a 10-mile ride from Waterbury up to Thomaston Reservoir and see some of the equipment they have down there, and go down and see the 260 and go through the car and see what it's like inside, go visit the shops and see how the restoration work is being done. There's a lot of equipment from Steamtown down there, a lot of stuff that ran in Vermont. Some of the coaches that ran up here are down there now, like that. But I thank you very much.